Some mountains in men are bigger than you think. Some rivers so fast, hell, you can't take a drink. Some burdens so heavy you can't...
Hey folks, Great Northern Prepper here. I'm here to discuss AR-15 magazines. Now this is by all means not an extensive or total overview of every single type of magazines. There's so many different manufacturers that it really makes it impossible for me to cover every single one or even the majority of them. But these are three different types. These are the three types that I have. I have the standard aluminum green follower GI mag. It's pretty much what they issue in the military, at least what they used to issue in the 2000s to mid 2000s. I don't know if they're probably issuing the same type of thing now to most, basic infantry units. I know a lot of them have been buying PMAGs, which is what these are, for deployments and whatnot. It just kind of depends on the unit and what their commanding officer just, decides to go with. This is an H&K all steel mag. This came out in about like 2005, 2006-ish, I believe. It was for the H&K 416, which was an AR platform that H&K built on, and they designed their own magazine. But as you can see, it looks nearly identical to the standard AR. Now, it may look like it's slightly bigger, and it is, but it carries the same amount of magazines. It just looks, these all look a lot bigger from right to left. It's just an optical illusion. But these are actually a really slick magazine, and they're all steel with a steel follower, and they have the anti-tilt follower in it. Now, what does that mean? Let me see if I can demonstrate here on the camera. I don't know if you can see, but the back end right there is kind of staying pretty much in the same spot, but it's tilting down, and you can also tilt it back as well. With this one, as you can see, as I'm even pushing on the farthest edge of it, it's not tilting at all. Now, what does that do? It's really not that big of a deal for the most part, but as you're loading it, if you're loading the ammo in there real quick, sometimes as you're loading it quick, as you can see, it gets stuck, and then that just kind of jams it up. It's not that big of a deal when it's early on, but as it gets lower, it can be kind of a nightmare, and just it's more of a headache than anything else. The anti-tilt followers just reduce the chances of jams and just kind of feeding issues that can come about. Now, the military has pretty much, I read a report that they had stuck with the same mags, and what they had done was just replace the followers. And I'm not sure if the springs or not. Springs are pretty much standard. There's a little bit of difference in quality, but I'll go over things about springs and followers later on as well. This is the Magpul PMAG. Now, Magpul came out with these. The first gen had no window. It was just all black polymer plastic. These are not steel. These are not aluminum. These are these are polymer plastics. They make them in a variety of colors. They make them in black. They make them kind of in this olive drab green. They make them in kind of a brown earth, dark earth, I think they call it, or a sage color as well. They're pretty slick. They also have the no tilt follower, as you can see. I can push right on the edge of it, and it doesn't tilt at all. It just continues to go down. What this window is, if you can see, and you can probably just Google it, and I'm sure any of you who are gun enthusiasts know what I'm talking about. As you can see in the window, what's the point of having that window? So you can know that you have bullets in there? Not really. I don't know if you can see this, but this is 5, 15, and 25. And this little orange deal will be about here in the middle of the little 5 slot. Let's see if you can see it. This little indent right here is the 5 slot. So it'll kind of let you, if you got 4, if you've got 6, 10, and then it'll continue to go down. This is aftermarket. The standard Magpul one will kind of look like that, just kind of a flat black. But this is aftermarket. It's kind of the Ranger pole, they call it. The reason that you kind of like these is that earlier on, a lot of people, what they did was they put a piece of paracord kind of around it just like this and taped it around the base. So what happens is that when it's in like a chest rig or something like that, or a mag pouch on your waist or around your lower chest, you can easily go down and grab and pull it, instead of, because a lot of times you're thinking, well, you know, I can just grab it and pull it like that. A lot of times when they're in magazine pouches, they're kind of sitting like this, so it can be somewhat difficult, especially in a stressful situation. So the advantage to having these is that it offers something to grab as you're pulling on it versus trying to grab the base. Not trying to make that look like a TV infomercial where people smash a hammer through the wall or anything like that. They're not, you know, 100% necessary to have, but they're really not that expensive. What I wanted to go over next was kind of how these three vary in how you can disassemble them. It is important to disassemble your magazines periodically. You wouldn't leave, if you're concerned with reliability and functionality of your weapon systems, you wouldn't leave a rifle just sitting somewhere for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. Even if, and you definitely wouldn't want to let it sit there for years, pull it out once a year, fire 30 rounds through it and set it back in there. Can you do that? Yes. Like my dad's old 1022, I think when I cleaned it, that was probably the first time in about 15 years. The thing shot flawlessly. He didn't fire that much. A few squirrels or bunny rabbits every once in a while, but that was about it. But it did affect its accuracy over that time. Same thing is going to go with your magazines. If you're really concerned, I mean, not to sound sexist, but when I was coming through, they always said, treat your weapons like a woman. You always, you treat her right. I guess I won't go all into that, but how the exact wording. But basically is, let's just say a friend. How about that? You can't just ignore them and then expect to, have them come to your aid and work, and be 100% behind you. Some of them will do that, but just like a good friend or a significant other, you can't just ignore them until you need them. You're going to need to put the time and effort into making sure that they're happy. How you make a magazine happy is the same thing you make a rifle happy. Maintenance, care, and time. And I'll show you how to do that here. Okay, folks, and this is going to be how you take apart the standard aluminum GI magazine. All the magazines roughly have the same exact components, and I'll show you those components once we take it apart. For these ones, as you look at the base of it, you're going to see this little hole, and if you got like a leather punch or a little 8-inch punch on your Leatherman or something along those lines, you can just take that and put that in the hole. I'm just using just kind of a little pen here, and as you can see, as I put that in, you're going to be kind of, now it's going to act like a pain in the ass. There we go. Let's see if we can do that from this front view. And the reason I used a pen is not because that's the proper thing to use. You can see it kind of gummed it up just a tad bit. Not a big deal. But I wanted to show you that you could use something like that in an expedient style. Normally I wouldn't. This is kind of an older magazine that I really don't use except for to have just around. It's kind of like my tester magazine and stuff like that. So anyways, that's why I did that. You can see it kind of revealed a little bit of metal there from being bent. But you'll slide this off. And as you slide it off, you can start to see the magazine spring in there. Now, you got to be careful about that spring because it's under tension. That's what, as you put the bullets in there, it puts that farther and farther under tension. And that's what, as it loads it, that's what pushes the rounds up. So, being that it's under tension, if you just pull this off real quick, you're going to see that spring come out of there like a jack in the box. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your finger down on it, going to pull that out, and then that spring, and it'll kind of get caught up on these little metal lips right there. So you just kind of ease it out. You don't need a jack on it. Don't try to like rip it out. It'll come out on its own. And as you can see, this follower comes out with it. And that's basically the main components of a AR-15 magazine, and pretty much any magazine you're really going to see. You're going to see the follower, which is what the rounds load onto, the spring, which compresses as it goes into the magazine. It's going to compress down. No, it's not meant to do that, but and then as you fire rounds, it loads up and opens out. The body of the magazine, as well as the base plate or the floor plate, just kind of depends on, you know, what nomenclature and what your background is. So what are you going to do once you disassemble it? I'm not going to go over the maintenance on every single magazine because it's going to be the same. As you take it out, you're going to make sure, if any, that's why it's always kind of good to do on some kind of cloth. This is just paper, just for the sake of this. But usually you have some kind of gun cleaning cloth you kind of lay out on the table, so if any oil or whatever, even if you have a standard cleaning table, it's always nice to have a cloth down so small pins or anything falls out, you can see exactly where it is. As well as, even when you're taking apart your weapons, if there's, you know, not just carbon falling out, but like pieces of metal or anything, it's a lot easier to spot and to find on a cloth than it would be even just a table, because then you're having to look at the table instead of just kind of going like that and everything falls in the middle. Anyway, so you're going to look for any kind of metal, plastic coming out. You're going to want to look at the follower, and you want to look at and make sure there's not any cracks. I mean, this is an old magazine, very old magazine, so it's been through the ringer, but it still works fine. I've never had any feeding issues with it. But you're going to want to look for cracks, especially cracks, dents, chips, anything like that. You're going to want to look along the edge, and it's kind of hard to see on this video, but you're going to want to make sure that it's relatively flat along the edges. Run your fingers along the side. If you feel anything that's really kind of out of place, as far as like a burr, which is, you know, just like a extra chunk of little tiny thing of metal, that can hang up. If you're having any issues with your magazines not feeding, I had issues, and this wasn't why, but I had some Tapco AK-47 magazines. I really don't like Tapco's AK-47 magazines at all. They didn't load correctly. Basically, as you loaded up the rounds, it would feed the first few, and then it would get hung up, and the next round wouldn't load into it, and these were just kind of sitting there actually loose. You could actually shake them out because this thing actually got hung up inside the magazine like that. The reason that can actually happen with AR mags as well, and that could be because it's got a bigger burr, especially on newer magazines. It's actually kind of nice to get somewhat older magazines, especially in these GIs. I'm not talking about something that's been around since like 1978, but you know, something that's a few years old, because it's usually been run through a few times, or more than a few times, but it'll have worked out any kind of the issues. And with some of the newer magazines, you don't run into this very often. It's very rare, but sometimes you do, that you'll have that issue where you'll be firing, and you know, the next thing you know, you have a click. Can't figure out why. Well, you look down in there, and this follower may not be, you know, you'll have the rounds coming up, but you actually might see a round kind of sitting down about half an inch to an inch below, and the follower may be actually hung up on here because it's got a little plastic burr. So you want to make sure that you don't have any of those. Now, as far as for oiling and anything like that, you really don't need to do too much. It all depends on your exact environment. But you can take an AP brush, which is just a plastic bristle gun cleaning brush. You can actually use a toothbrush, but they're not as strong. They don't last as long. And kind of, you know, using this pen as an example, kind of going up in there and kind of going along all the edges, and then turning the brush so that's facing out, so it's hitting the metal. and kind of go all along there and go on the inside and kind of just brush off if there's any debris. You'll get kind of stuff gunked up in there. You'll have any kind of grease as your gun's firing. If you have any kind of gun oil or any stuff like that, that can work its way in there over time down there. The carbon, dust, and whatever will build up on that, and you'll actually, if you, well, this one's, you know, I keep my magazines pretty clean, but sometimes when you reach in some of those, anyone's been in the military and use kind of training mags that they hand out, you'll kind of go down in there sometimes and you'll find like this kind of, it's really kind of a thick grease, and that's basically a carbon, gun oil buildup of dust and other stuff. So you break that all up. You can also brush this all off. You can brush the follower off, and then you can actually just take, and I use Impro 7, and I talked about making homemade gun lubricant. The caveat to that is I personally don't really ever use that. I know people that do, and I trust them, but since I haven't, I can't give my 100% guarantee of saying this is, you know, good. I haven't done it. Since I bought a bunch of this, I bought a bunch of little bottles like this. I also got a couple gallon jugs of it, and that's pretty much going to probably last me for the next 15 years, you know, God willing. And so I really have had no need to make homemade gun oil lubricant. I see it, the only reason I offered, put that up on the website was, you know, you never know when you might need it. You might have to do it if you can't find any gun oil lubricant. Homemade might be better, but you know, there is always that danger of some kind of issue. But anyways, so I would put, you know, if you got a little cleaning cloth, it's just napkin, I would put probably just 1 or 2 drops. I'd probably go up inside the magazine and rub it all around in there. I'd rub it all around there, kind of get a little bit of light oil coat on, and I'd actually run it all on this spring here. I wouldn't put any on the follower. After you run all the way to the bottom, then I would take the clean and dry side and I would run it back up, so you're wiping off all the oil, or the vast majority of it, and then I would do the same in here. You could also put a drop on your AP brush and do that, and then kind of shove a cleaning cloth up into there and pull it back out, up into there and pull it back out. The reason being is I live in the high desert now, so it's a pretty dry environment, so I definitely really don't want any oil in there. I wouldn't mind having a light coat, and I really can pretty much go without one for the most part. Same with my guns. If you're in a more wet environment, it's really not going to hurt you as much, but if you have just gobs of oil inside of your magazine here, you're going to run into some issues. You'll basically, oil is like magnet to, and the dirt's like a steel nail or something like that. It just zooms in on it and it just sticks there, and it'll cause you a heck of a mess. So to put this back together, you're going to want to make sure, and as you can kind of see on here, the follower looks like a bullet. This looks like the body, this looks like the neck, and this looks like the actual round itself, or the bullet itself, and this looks like the round's body. So since the magazine goes up into there, you're going to want to make sure that that's forward. The bullet to the head of the round there always goes in the wider space, and the rear of the round always goes into here. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take where the head of the round, the neck is, and you kind of put that in there. These two little pieces on here are going to feed down into it kind of at an angle. So as you do that, then you can kind of, let's see if I can get that, that'll kind of feed in there at that angle, and then that kind of just goes all the way in there. So you're going to want to push that spring in there, and then hold that spring down, and then through these little lips here, we're going to feed that base plate through. Actually, sorry, got that backwards. It happens sometimes. I'm going to feed that base plate through. You can hear that click. There we go. And now it is in. So now we have a fully functioning magazine. Okay, onto this one. This H&K is a real pain in the butt to get up. Okay, what you're going to need to do with these is take some kind of object. I'm just going to use the pen because I got it right here. There's a little piece down here right in the middle, and if you can see that you press down. As you press down, stupid focus. As you press down, there's that little lip right here. If you can see that, there's a little lip right there that you are going to press in with something like this, little wrench, and it comes right out. Now, since I just put this magazine together, I'm going to quickly take the old magazine out to illustrate the difference between the two for you. And if you can see the difference, get this a little bit closer. It's in the front lip right there, and that's really what goes down. While with these newer followers that don't slip, they're pretty much of an equal size. This H&K one is of all steel. So that's it. It's the same thing as the standard GI mag. It's just got the different follower on there. Now, so you can see me not fumble on this one. It's been a while since I've actually taken apart a bunch of these magazines. Not a good thing. I should actually do it more. This is the Magpul. This is the easiest one out of all of them to, take apart. And all you got to do is, if you can see that little center piece right in there, all you got to do with that is press down on it, and it slipped up. Spoke too soon. There we go. So that's pretty simple. No different than the other magazines. The AR-15 magazines are pretty much all the same relatively, except for that little orange piece right there. And another thing about AR-15 magazines with this aluminum one, I was always told only to put 28 rounds in there when I was in the Marine Corps. Why? Because they said if you put a full 30, it can compress the springs too much, and you could end up with issues where the compression could stay permanent. And with these H&Ks, I was told that you could put a full 30 in there, and with the PMAGs you could also do that. I don't know if it's an issue with the springs per se. You can buy, I would probably, if you don't have a lot of magazines, I'd probably buy a few extra followers, a few extra springs, a few extra base plates, so you can fix them as you need them. If you come across some magazines that have issues with the springs or anything like that, I would save all the parts. And I've had some issues, and this is the next thing I'll tell you about, is I've had some issues with some magazines that I forgot about, that I packed away in a couple different rigs, end up getting put in something and I completely forgot about them. Well, they stayed full for a while, for a couple years actually, which is way more than you ever want to. You want to rotate through these. So if you keep like a bug out bag ready, you don't want to have, if you've got 15 magazines, don't put all 15 magazines loaded out. Put 7 loaded out. And 8 months later, or 6 months later, go and grab the other 8, or let's just say you have 14 for easy. So you got 7 all loaded up. 6 months later, take them, unload them, load up the other 7, and let those ones that were loaded just sit there. What I actually did after I left them in there was the spring got compressed. So actually when we took a couple rounds out, the follower really didn't come up because the springs kind of gained this memory from being compressed for so long. What I did was I took them out and I kind of pulled on them a little bit, and I actually kind of tied them one end to one board and another to another, and I left it on there for about a week. I didn't really yank on it. I just had slight kind of a pull on it. And I left it on there for a week, took it off, and then I just let it sit there. I don't know, I probably had it sitting on a table for a couple months. I put it back in the mag, and I didn't have any issues with it. Now, that was just my experience. That may not be able to be replicated, but I wouldn't throw away anything just because that happens. It works, you know, these magazines overall, all three of them are fine mags. They all work. I would really recommend if you get some of these older GI mags, you can pick up the followers for a few bucks, the newer followers, so that they don't tilt, the anti-tilt followers. You can pick them up for a few bucks each, and as you're ordering other kind of gun stuff, just order a couple of them at a time. I would order extras because magazines break. Word on the Magpuls, I've seen tests done, and I've seen real-world applications, and these things are not just plastic pieces of junk. I've seen videos of people rolling cars over them and then picking them up and shooting them, and they still work fine. It's a really tough polymer. It works really well. And I've really been impressed with the Magpuls. So, and now that the crisis is over, you can pick them up now for really not that much money. They're actually they're pretty, like 15 bucks a piece. And here, let me show you what they look like when they're loaded up. All right, this is what they look like when they're fully loaded. The only thing I don't like is this can cast a bit, that can reflect off there to a certain extent. If you really want to, you could probably paint over them or not even use them. But as you can see, as I eject some rounds out, you're going to see that orange follower coming up. And now you can see it's at about the 25-ish. Well, I smack dab right in the middle of that 25 mark for the most part. And I've ejected 5 rounds. Now let's eject another 5. Another 5, so now we should have 20. Now we should have 15. Now, as you can see, it's right in the middle of that 15 mark. Drop out another 10. And it's smack dab in the middle of the 5. This is just for easy recognition, because a lot of times when you're firing a lot of rounds, you won't even notice how many you have left. If you've been firing in the heat of a confrontation and you look down and you look at this mag, you're not going to know how many you fired. You could look at the brass, but this is an easy one where you can just be, firing, and you tilt up your rifle and you look at it and you go, okay, I got 5. A lot of times what you can do is you can actually just, this is more for tactics, but you can pull out the magazine, stow it somewhere, grab another full magazine, so now you've got 31 rounds. So, when it comes down to getting a little bit farther down the line, when you really need every round that counts, you can pull out that mag full of 5. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. AR-15 mags are really not that, or any magazine really is not that, advanced of a design. They're pretty simple. Since the magazine's been made, they pretty much follow the same characteristics of a body, spring, follower, and base plate. They're all pretty standard. There is new technology coming out, like these anti-tilt ones, a little bit stronger springs that don't have that issue of memory retention, so that they don't stay stuck if they've been loaded up. But I would really recommend rotating through your magazines throughout the year. I would say about every 6 months you'll be pretty safe. Pistol, rifle, anything that you have that takes a magazine. Even shotguns to a point. I mean, you can wear out that spring and that choke tube as well. So, might be something you want to think about, as well as having a couple extra springs for that. So anyways, this is the Great Northern Prepper, and I'm out.
I wore out my shoes in that wrong way to run. I blistered my skin working hard in the sun. Supper's almost over and I done cleaned my plate, and there's a light shining yonder, boys, I don't think I'll wait. I'm a laid back one one, and I've been one so long. I ain't perfect, you can tell by my songs. Brothers, forgive me for all of my wrongs. The good Lord, He's calling, and it's time to go home. I hear Him calling, and it's time to go home.